Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Seymour with the Optimal Response Initiative. Stay alert, stay alive, and thrive. The training continues. During this episode, I share my realization that there's a continuum response line for everything. Because without the extremes, we can't be aware of a continuum between those extremes. I review the ORI Continuum Response Line, giving you a way to get out of the knee-jerk reaction trap and find a way to respond better, or better, capital letters. Anything is better than worst, with the goal of choosing which direction one wants to move, which is towards optimal. We all know that it is easier said than done though. The ORI Continuum Response Line is an empowering tool for you to choose your response. I also briefly touch on other continuums regarding awareness. Where is your focus focused? Internal location of control to external, biology to environment, body to mind, the facts of a situation all the way to our behavioral response, which we hope is optimal, and we have tools so that it can be more optimal. Communication from passive to assertive, which is optimal, all the way to the far right, aggressive, which is the most extreme. No boundaries to optimally personally identified and set boundaries, all the way to rigid. Cycles and styles of relating from one way or the highway, to reciprocal. I challenge you by asking, where do your emotes rank in your chain of command? And yes, movement has a continuum from stagnant, unmotivated, to taking action, motivated. I also discuss the neuromodulator dopamine and its role in the continuum between what we want and what we get, highlighting that effort is required, aka taking action. What occurs when dopamine levels are high as well as low? How to get back your get up and go that may have got up and went a decade or more ago. By focusing on the basics first, and then discussing how one might catapult their dopamine levels out of the rut it may be in, below baseline, back up to baseline, and even above baseline, reminding you that this is possible if and when the basics are consistently accomplished first. I define my personal definition of a capital letter need versus a lowercase letter need. Both are important, but you are responsible for the first one. I share a personal story about how I behaviorally moved through a hard season in my life, I believe it or not, catapulting my dopamine levels way above baseline, and I didn't even know I was doing it at the time. And finally, I share the most extreme I know of in the Bible: fear, the kind that is based on shame and condemnation and guilt, and perfect love, which casts out that fear. In response, there is a space. In that space lies our ability to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. I realized, I think this past year, that while I have always valued the ability to choose my response, I had a hard time getting out of the knee-jerk reaction trap. And I always loved Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning. In this quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our ability to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And because I'm such a visual person, I saw in my mind's eye the continuum response line in between the stimulus and response. So it actually is that space for me. And so are the tools that are associated with it. And I hope they help you as well. So one of the first continuums I want to look at briefly, and all of these I'm looking at briefly, where is your focus focused? So any given moment, we're dealing with many things at one time. Internal location of control is where I am focused on my thoughts. So my self-awareness, my thoughts are primary in optimal response to the external environment. So the external environment is definitely paid attention to because we don't live in a bubble, but we are trying to operate more often than not from an internal location of control. Recognizing the external, but not letting it boss us around. And then association with that, we've got a default mode network. In the middle, I have mode of network continuum, but to the far right is our deliberate mode. So we may default to a less than optimal mode, a knee-jerk reaction mode. We want to be working towards a deliberate mode, choosing our response. And I will say that while the initial ORI Continuum Response Line has to the far left worst and to the far right optimal, with lowercase better, capital better, all the way to the far right optimal. Some of the continuum response lines are going to be showing the middle as the optimal location to be operating from, because that is the balanced place in the midst of these two extremes. Some of them, however, and you'll know them when you see them, to the far left is going to be the worst, and to the far right is going to be the most optimal. Or to the far left will be the lowest intensity, and to the far right will be the highest intensity, for example. All of these slides will be available to you, but you can listen and we can just talk about the fact that we have extremes and we have continuums, and we are constantly working to find our balance and or what direction are we moving towards in our response. So we have either operating from an internal location of control, which in the ORI, Optimal Response Initiative, that is our goal, not to be stuck in the knee-jerk reaction trap, reacting to all the people, places, and things, the external, reacting to everybody else and everything, reacting to everybody else reacting. And we are also working to respond deliberately based on our morals, our beliefs, our goals, our boundaries we've set for ourselves, based on deliberate mode. Optimal awareness of self and environment is in the middle on this one. This is about perception is key. To the far left, we have dissociative. So this level of awareness is a lack of bodily awareness or a removal of conscious bodily experiences. In the middle is interoceptive, an internal focus, surface of skin and within the body. So from skin to within. And then to the far right, we have exteroceptive, which is the external focus, everything beyond self, beyond our skin out there. In regard to perception, being aware of how aware of self we are, from me, myself, and I, my skin, and internally, to my thoughts, emotions, and bodily awareness, to also being aware of what is going on in the external environment. And I don't want to be so hyper-focused on the internal that I cannot optimally interact with my external environment. I also don't want to be so hyper-focused on my external environment that I am not paying attention to any of my internal states or needs. We want to find a nice balance in the middle and be able to move along that continuum as necessary, depending on context, of course. Context is key. Perception is key as well. Self-awareness and perception of self within one's environment is optimally important. And optimal awareness of self and environment is more often than not somewhere in the middle. Are you operating from an internal location of control? And what kind of person or tree are you dealing with? So this is one of those lessons in Optimal Response Initiative. So we are considering a continuum to the far left. On this one is internal location of control, which would be the ideal, the optimal. To the far right would be the external location of control. We want to be operating more from an internal location of control. These are the thoughts that I can control, my I statements, and all the skills within Optimal Response Initiative that I'm utilizing to figure out where am I on the continuum response line, what direction do I want to move, and what might I do now that is going to be better, more optimal than what I might have just done if I hadn't used my skills. Simultaneously consider, of course, I don't consider people to be trees, but as far as a lesson, you know a tree by the fruit that it bears. So if every person is a type of tree, what kind of tree am I dealing with? Is this a healthy Washington State crisp apple tree? Is it a rotten apple tree? What kind of fruit is it bearing or not bearing consistently or more often than not? Or is it a fig tree? Is it a rotten fig tree? Is it an orange tree? A healthy orange tree? And even if it is a healthy orange tree, if I stand in front of it for several decades and ask it, if this is an animation, if I ask it for a healthy Washington State crisp apple, it may really want to give me that apple, but it's an orange tree. It can't. So how realistic are my expectations based on the type of person I'm dealing with and what they can or cannot reciprocate or provide in this relationship? So it's something important to think about. And the more I'm operating from an internal location of control, me, myself, and I, being aware of my internal states, context, and what my needs, wants, desires, goals, motivations, boundaries, beliefs, morals. I could go on and on. What those are, what might be an optimal response in this situation, given the kind of person I'm dealing with, for example. So kind of two things. Are you operating from an internal or an external location of control? So that's regarding self. And then regarding the external, the people, the trees, what kind of tree are we dealing with? Because this helps us have realistic and more optimal expectations given the context, the facts of the context. Okay. Another continuum is nature versus nurture, which is chapter 4 in the Optimal Response Initiative, or week 4 in the ORI course. For this continuum, I am looking to the far left as biology, to the far right as environment. Both are important, and we are living within the continuum between our genetics, what we don't choose, how we come into the world. We also don't even choose the environments that we are born into, for example. We want to be aware of our genetics, our health, our internal states, what we can do to influence those in optimal ways, for example, and our environments, what we can and cannot do regarding our environments. And of course, with the Optimal Response Initiative, with all of this, the most important thing is our response to it. Not 100% biology, not 100% environment. It is our response to all of those things. And again, we don't live in a bubble. We are not oblivious to these factors. We want to consider all of these in a compassionate, knowledgeable way and have an optimal response regarding them and within them for ourselves. The crucial connection, which is chapter 5 or week 5 in the Optimal Response Initiative course. With this, we are talking about the continuum of our body, physical body, all the way to our mind. So both are crucially connected. They influence each other massive ways. And I don't look at them as separate. I look at them as integrative, just like I look at all areas of health are connected. Our physical health, our cognitive health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, and our social health. All areas of health are connected. And then we have a continuum here. And if you remember the SIT report, this is a tool that I created in which you have, first you're addressing the situation, the facts of the situation. Then you are addressing your sympathetic nervous system. What do you notice regarding the fight, flight, or freeze response? So physical sensations, things going on, such as my heart is beating, my breathing is in my chest, my pupils are dilated, maybe I have tunnel vision, I'm sweating, my hands are cold, my stomach is sick. So we have some examples of what might be going on with the sympathetic nervous system when it is cranked up higher and higher. Then we learn about how to pay attention to our thoughts, what are we thinking, and then our emotions, which I call emotes, energy and motion, moving up and out to give us intel about what we may need in this particular situation. There are a couple other questions about emotes, the intel, and then at the end is our behavioral response. So thoughts are somewhere in the middle of this process. So this would be a continuum then from the situation all the way to the behavioral response. There's a lot going on. It's not just that something happens and then we react and nothing else was going on. There's a lot going on. We've got the facts of the situation. We have all of the things that go on with the sympathetic nervous system, thoughts, and we have learned and are continuing to learn to pay attention to the content and quality of our thoughts, our emotions, emotes, the intel, trying to give us intel on what we may need in this particular sit in order to thrive. And we need the intel. And then we have, at the end, we have our behavioral response. So it can be very empowering to learn about this continuum and this tool, Dr. S's SIT report, to start to break it down. Communication. This continuum of communication to the far left is passive. In the middle is assertive, which is optimal. And to the far right is aggressive. Any extreme regarding communication is not going to be optimal. So to the far left, passive, not optimal, just going along, not saying anything, not having an opinion, not voicing needs, wants, desires. And then to the far right, we have aggressive, kind of my way or the highway. I'm going to be a bully about it, for example. In the middle is assertive. This is where we respect ourselves and the other individual or individuals. We have difficult conversations in a respectful way. This would be assertive, balanced, somewhere in the middle, optimum for communication. And then we have Boundaries. To the far left is going to be no boundaries. In the middle is the optimal personally identified boundaries. To the far right, we're going to have very rigid, no flexibility. Now, I could do an entire podcast, write an entire book about boundaries. With this one, I want you to remember that I always take everything back to all areas of health: physical, cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and social, for example. So boundaries are not just I have a fence around my property. Boundaries are what kind of boundaries or limits or structure do I have in place regarding my physical space, my physical health, my schedule, to what degree I'm either staying up late watching all kinds of Netflix or going to bed at a decent time to get the quantity and quality of sleep that I need. That would be a boundary around my time for myself regarding sleep for my physical health, for example. Cognitive health boundaries. What kind of things am I listening to, reading? What kind of conversations am I having with myself, with other people? What's the content and quality of those conversations or the information that I am taking in throughout the day? And emotional, what degree am I learning about emotions and what they may be telling me that I need? To what degree am I managing emotions more than they are managing me or bossing me around? How self-aware am I regarding emotions? The more I work on this, the more I put healthy boundaries around the energy that is spent regarding those emotions, for example. Spirituality, we could say the same thing with that. If my spiritual health is important to me, do I have boundaries around all the other things I just talked about so that I can have the time to focus on improving my relationship with my higher power, serving in the community in a way that I want to or not? Either way would be boundaries. And for example, the social health, what kind of boundaries do I have around the content and the quality of people I'm spending time with? And within the time I spend, to what degree am I setting boundaries about the topics or conversations, for example? So boundaries is huge. A lot of times people either have no boundaries or they have very rigid boundaries. And of course, it's going to vary depending on who we are in context, but we need to know who we are to be able to even set the boundaries. And if we don't know what our boundaries are, we're not even going to know when they're crossed, and or we might get very angry if they're crossed and yet not even realize why we are angry or how we assertively communicate our needs or set or maintain those boundaries. Should probably do an entire podcast since I'm camped out at this slide. But there is a continuum regarding boundaries, from no boundaries all the way to very rigid boundaries. Okay, a continuum also of styles and cycles of relating. To the far left, we have one way. To the far right, we have reciprocal. So with this one, I just came up with a couple examples of the one way, the not optimal, one way style and cycle of relating with myself and others. This one would be very rigid. By the way, all of these that I'm about to talk about are very rigid. Highway or the highway, aggressive, fake kindness. So not authentic. It's fake kindness because it's not I, but the person engaging in it is being manipulative, trying to get something out of me, and they are totally fake in their intentions doing it. Helpless. We all need help, but this is helplessness on a consistent basis. Capital letter need. We'll talk about that in a moment, which is needing the external to give me what I need. So being externally controlled. This is a capital letter need, dependent on the external, which is a problem because I can't control the external. So if I capital letter need my external, people, places, things, environment, to be a certain way for me to be okay in how I am with myself and others, it's going to be a major Charlie Foxtrot, would you say? Yes. And then this is also victim mentality, and it's fear focused. Okay. To the far right, we have reciprocal. Now, this is more optimal. This is the most optimal. Reciprocal, equally balanced. This is going to be flexible, assertive, authentic, empowered, helpful. Lowercase letter need. This is where, the lowercase letter need is a complement. We complement one another in our cycle and style of relating with each other in these relationships. It is a complement to lowercase letter need one another, not capital letter need. Capital letter need is that external focus where I have to have this person or this situation be a certain way for me to be okay. And that's a problem because I can't control people or all the factors in a situation. Okay, so reciprocal is lowercase letter need, this is just Dr. S's description of these things I've come up with to help myself, and I share them with you. Reciprocal is also a victor mindset, not a victim. And this also encompasses love, hope, the dream, the goal. We are focused on love, hope, dream, OP of working towards optimal, basically. It's love focused, not fear focused. So this is the continuum of the styles and cycles of relating. An optimal response initiative, this is chapter 12, where we talk about less than optimal and more optimal styles of relating. Just thought of a continuum that kind of encompasses either very rigid one way or reciprocal, balanced and equal. I give, you give, we give and take in equal measure. Okay, now this came to me as I was organizing this podcast, and I thought this was interesting. Where do emotes rank in your chain of command? Because as you know from other podcasts or from doing ORI, I talk about emotes, which is the intel trying to move up and out to give us intel about what we need, right? So every emotion has intensity from lower intensity to higher intensity. So we could look up the emote mad in a synonym finder and get many variations, many synonyms of that emote energy moving up and out within us to give us intel about what we need. And we are not just mad at the 50-yard line. We are not just rageful, 100 plus, and we're not just irritated. So it's important to consider, where are we on this continuum? And if I can get a hold of my, for example, irritation sooner than later, then I don't have to get a speeding ticket going 100 miles per hour or 100% intensity, having a rage reaction that is out of context in my day-to-day life. I want to get a speeding ticket on a neighborhood road, a living room with my family, because I have a reaction that is like on NASCAR. Not be a speeding ticket with the madness because I'm reacting in rage, for example. We talk about a lot in the optimal response initiative. Yes, emotes are intel. So we don't want to stuff them and not get the intel. We also don't want to just not be self-aware, and all those other continuums we talked about before now are helpful to utilize so that we can have more awareness regarding our thoughts, our emotions, perceptions, the facts of a situation, context, cycles and styles of relating, whether something is within our boundaries or outside our boundaries, whether they're being respected or not, etc. And we want to be aware of the intel, definitely, and factor it into our optimal response. Use it to help us figure out what we need. It's a lot more manageable to address a need when I'm irritated than wait till I'm rageful, for example. Emotions are important, but they are not the entire story. So while I teach people not to stuff the emotions, I teach people that the emotes are intel for this land of thriving, and we need intel, but they are not the only and the most high-ranking thing in a situation. So let's look at this. Where do emotes rank in your chain of command? So I have them as the situation, the facts of the situation. I put that as an E1. Okay. And E2 is going to be the sympathetic nervous system. All of these are important. Okay. But we'll find out in a moment what I think is the highest ranking in chain of command. 3 are our thoughts. 4 are the emotes, energy and motion, moving up and out to give us intel about what I may need in this set situation facts. E2, sympathetic nervous system. 3, thoughts. 4, emotes. Now let's get to the NCOs. Okay, 5 is the intel to thrive. My personally identified needs for me to meet or me. You notice it's capital letter need. Optimal response initiative is about you focusing on you to figure out what you need, capital letter need, and can do first and foremost for yourself before you go to external things. Because you yourself and you are available at 2 a.m. Not everybody and everything else is. And we first need to be able to recalibrate ourselves before we seek external things. This is where your power is. Okay, edicts, the way I can meet this need in an optimal way. So this is the way I can meet this need in an optimal way. 5 is the intel to thrive. 6 is the way I can meet this need. 7 is choosing the most optimal way out of the identified potential routes. 8 is taking action. And E9 is the highest ranking in this continuum because the E9 level is continuing and following through, moving out, and taking action. That is the highest rank because we are optimally responding. We've gone through the process of all the intel that was at an core level, but then we had to do something with that intel. Intel in and of itself is only intel. It's what we do with the intel, which means do action, move out, take action. Okay, I thought this was kind of fun. Emotions are important, but they're yours. Okay, all right, that was fun. Okay, this continuum is movement is key. It's mandatory to the mission. Movement. What's the mission? Your health, physical, cognitive, emotional, spiritual, social, and quality of life. This is the mission. You are the mission. With movement, you have to the far left, stagnant, to the far right, taking action, or to the far left, unmotivated, to the far right, motivated. Movement is on a continuum as well. And with goals, we must take action. Let's talk about dopamine for a moment. Dopamine is a neuromodulator that acts as a chemical messenger. It also is a neurohormone released by the hypothalamus. I love the little pretty pictures, a lot of color. Plus, I love the brain. It's super cool. Okay, what happens with high dopamine? When dopamine is at high levels, we feel happy, motivated, alert, focused. The higher and higher and higher it goes, we experience euphoria, energized, and a high sexual drive. These are the typical things that occur as dopamine goes from, high to really high. Okay. What happens when dopamine is low? We feel unhappy, unmotivated, distracted. We might also experience memory loss, mood swings, sleep problems, concentration challenges, low sex drive, increased irritability / aggression. Ooh, doesn't feel so good to even think about that. What do we do about dopamine? We can do things about our dopamine levels, but just as in the military, we have to do basic training before tech school or AIT, whatever your service calls it. The Army calls it AIT, Air Force calls it tech school. But basic training is first. Take care of the basics first. Sleep. There's a lot to that. You can look back at other podcasts. I think I did 3 or 4 podcasts on sleep because it's massive in your health and quality of life. And that's an understatement. Sunlight, movement, exercise 15 minutes minimum, nutrition. There are foods high in tyrosine, but nutrition in general needs to be balanced and make sure we're getting all the things we need. And fluids, stay hydrated. So what we're eating and what we're drinking or what we're not eating and not drinking is going to impact us. These are the basics: sleep, sunlight, movement, nutrition, and fluids. Take care of the basics first. If you don't take care of the basics first, Charlie Foxtrot. Or do you want to put it in normal terms, which I don't like the word normal. If we don't take care of the basics, how can we expect anything beyond the basics to be effective? The question. It's not effective if we don't take care of the basics. Okay, optimal sleep replenishes dopamine reserves. Revisit the ORI podcast episodes on sleep. Sunlight, move out, go outside time, go time. So you want to spend 10 minutes early in the morning outside, 20 to 30 minutes on a cloudy day. Some of the benefits include hormone regulation like cortisol, which is a stress hormone. We want that higher earlier in the day because it gives us energy for the day. Melatonin, we want cortisol lowering as we get closer to bedtime, and we want melatonin higher at bedtime. Getting in the sun daily for 10 minutes early in the morning, you want to do it sooner than later. And then 20 to 30 minutes on a cloudy day. Also, vitamin D levels. A lot of adults are taking vitamin D because their vitamin D levels are deficient. And as adults, even the kids these days, do we even get outside or not? I would say not. 10 minutes a day. Also, ORI health tanks. As you know, ORI health tanks are physical, cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and social. You want to do 2 things a day for each tank. You want to do it consistently before you try some extreme. All things considered, on average, our thoughts and behaviors may override pills. Why? How can addressing our health tanks and doing 2 things a day for each tank, or not addressing our health tanks and not doing anything for our tanks and running around on fumes, how can that override the effect of a pill? And I'm not saying any particular pill. How is it that our thoughts and behaviors could override the effect of a pill, our behaviors or non-behaviors? Well, I'm here to say there is no magic pill. Like, pills can have an impact. Medication can have an impact. It has an effect. Obviously, there's an effect because then you also have the side effects. but also our behaviors influence the effectiveness of the medication or lack thereof. So for example, if I take a diet pill, but I eat the same or more, calories in will still exceed energy burned, and I'll stay the same or gain more weight. If I take a pill for depression, but I stay in bed and I don't do 2 things a day to fuel my health tanks, nothing will change. Well, I may actually end up more and more depressed. Effort is required. There is no magic pill. The pill, medication is part of the story, but it is not the entire story. Just like emotes are intel, but emotions, intel in and of themselves is not the whole story. They're important, but they don't have the highest rank. It's the action we take. It's our response. It's our behavioral actions that we take that have the highest rank, the highest impact in our life. And the same is true with medication. Effort is required. Decide and take action. If you decide but don't take action, you'll be worse off, because between wanting and getting, effort is required. So this is my definition of a need, capital letter need. ORI training focuses on that which one can do for themselves, operating from an internal location of control, meeting one's initial capital letter needs in optimal ways first. We don't look to external things, people, material things, etc., to give us what we capital letter need, as this would be operating from an external location of control. To lowercase need things from people is healthy, as we do lowercase need one another. However, capital letter needs are for you, yourself, and you to identify and meet in optimal ways first. Nobody else can do for you what only you can do for you, and you need, capital letter need, to identify that need, capital letter, for you first, and then take optimal action. So this is my definition of capital letter need. This is what we do in the Optimal Response Initiative. Only you can identify the capital letter needs, and only you can figure out how to meet that need in an optimal way. And that is your responsibility, and that is how you become empowered in thriving territory. Let's talk about leveraging your physiology. When we need, capital letter need, want, crave something, even basic things like water and food because we are thirsty or hungry, that desire, that want triggers a peak in dopamine. After the peak, dopamine, naturally drops below baseline. It is this drop below baseline that motivates us to go and get what we, capital letter need, want. We physically feel the need, increased want, craving, desire to take action in order to get the thing that we need or want. The more we think about the thing we need, want, crave, desire, and the more we don't take action to go and get it, the more pain we feel because our dopamine is below baseline. And I have the ORI Continuum Response Line. To the far left is worst, lowercase better to the 50-yard line, capital better, all the way to optimal to the far right. To the far left, also from worst really to the 50-yard line, I also have hopeless side, unhealthy. When we get to the 50-yard line and we're moving towards the right, this is more the hope-filled side, the healthy side of the continuum, and we want to be moving to the right. Anything is better than worst. And P.S., your body and dopamine don't care what the it is. So it being the need, the craving, the want, the desire, it's up to you to choose the it, what the it is, as well as which direction you want to move on the ORI continuum line to get. So essentially we can be focused on unhealthy things, getting and eating 20 donuts, for example, spending all my money shopping, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes, for example, driving really fast, isolating, disconnecting myself, reacting to the anger, etc., in a vicious cycle. So those would be it's that are less healthy extremes. I want to identify my it as, for example, learning ORI skills to be self-aware and take care of my health, working on an exercise program, working on my physical health or every area of health, working on a training that I'm trying to improve myself, or, cleaning out a closet, helping a neighbor. Okay, you get the picture. The capital it, my brain, dopamine, my body doesn't care what the it is. We have the power to choose to identify our it and then leverage our physiology to move towards optimal to get what we want, which is the it. Sound like Dr. Seuss. Okay, so leverage your physiology and fuel up with dopamine. Identify your long-term goals, which is the destination for each area of health. Then identify 2 actions you can do to fuel every tank. 2 things for each tank: physical, cognitive, emotional. Physical, said physical twice. I'm really emphasizing physical. Social, I left out spiritual. So if spiritual is important to you, definitely consider it. I do. So 5 health tanks, 2 things a day for each tank. That's 10 daily actions, movements, taking action. And P.S., dopamine is your physiological fuel. Leverage your physiology. If you physically feel like your get up and go, got up and went a decade or 3 ago, here's what you do to catapult your dopamine out of the below baseline rut it is in. Leverage your physiology and do hard things. Make a list of 5 things that are harder, more uncomfortable than what you are doing, such as sitting on the couch or lying in bed as you try to get the go you need, capital letter need, to get off the couch or get out of bed, for example. So make a list of 5 things that are harder to do than what you are currently doing, more uncomfortable. Not dangerous. No, don't say what I'm not saying here. So 5 things that are harder than what you're currently doing, like being really comfortable in your chair, really comfortable in bed. Okay. So quick story, gosh, it was 20 years ago, because my son is almost 25. So it's about 20 years ago. So a lot of you have heard this story. I've talked about it several times, but I haven't always shared this. So let's see. So my son, Jacob, when he was 10 months old, we were told he was profoundly deaf. Now, the thing about this situation, however, is we found out about a surgery that he could get a cochlear implant. So we had a goal, we had a plan, and we worked the action steps to accomplish the plan for 4 or 5 years and then some to get him what he needed, hearing, speaking, and then mainstreamed in kindergarten, which was amazing. And I thank God for it and all the people who helped us. The second diagnosis of blindness, however, when he was 5, we were told he'd be blind at 10 from retinitis pigmentosa. Long story not so short, became so depressed, not just in emote, sadness, heaviness, depressed, like clinically depressed, like physically, like my limbs felt like they were 5,000 pounds each. Like I couldn't move, but I had to move, and I pushed through and I moved, and all the other things that go with it. And I just had no answers, did not want to accept it. I was devastated emotionally. I was devastated, really. I was deficient. I was in a rut in every area of my health and life. And I was highly concerned. I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I didn't want to get out of bed. I mean, I did get out of bed every day, but it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Yes, this season of my life, but actually physically, mentally getting out of bed. And I pushed through like I was, walking up a 20-mile hill in the snow every step all day. I was already exhausted. So I was pretty desperate. I really didn't know what to do. Nothing was helping me. My faith wasn't even helping me. Or I didn't think it was. I didn't feel like it was at the time. And then a couple of weeks into it, I woke up, my alarm went off, and immediately I had this thought, I'm going to clean the bathroom. Let's see, I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment. Okay. So I had this thought, I'm going to clean the bathroom. Why is that important? Well, I hated cleaning the bathroom. Every Saturday I would clean the bathrooms. We had a ranch. I would start at the, far left of the house where the laundry room was, from the left to the right continuum. My house is a continuum. So I would start with the laundry room, the kitchen, living room, dining room, down the hallway, the kids' room. They pretty much clean their own rooms. At the end of the hallway was the bathroom. That's a 3-bed, 2-bath, the bathroom. And for some reason, I was just hyper-focused on the kids' bathroom, guest bathroom. I knew I needed to get up and clean the bathroom. I hated cleaning the bathrooms on Saturday. It was the last thing I did. So I did a hard thing. I didn't know I was leveraging my dopamine, but I got up and I cleaned the bathroom. I felt like I felt better. Why did I feel better? One, I felt like, what is wrong with me? Why am I cleaning the bathroom? My husband started wondering too, because I was doing it every morning and it's not like it was dirty. He was thinking maybe I needed to go see someone. And yeah, maybe I did. And actually I did. It didn't help. And neither did the medication. And so he was thinking I needed to go see another type of somebody because he was worried. I was cleaning the bathroom every morning, and it wasn't 6. It was earlier than that because we had to drive to Atlanta. But I had to drive to whatever time it was. Maybe it was 6. Back then there were less people, so it didn't take so long to drive in from the suburbs, but we'll just pretend it's 6. 6 a.m. alarm goes off. I'm off and clean the bathroom every morning like clockwork. It was like Groundhog's Day, except I felt good about this. I didn't really know why I was doing it, but it's what I had to do when I got up. And I had to get up as soon as the alarm went off, and I cleaned the bathroom. All I know is it worked. Eventually my husband stopped asking, and eventually I stopped needing to clean the bathroom as soon as the alarm went off. Is that not amazing? Why is that amazing? I was so excited when I learned about how we can leverage our dopamine by doing hard things, something harder than what we're currently doing. Laying in bed is comfortable. What is more uncomfortable than that? Well, yeah, getting up, but definitely getting up and cleaning the bathroom, which was my least favorite thing to do. And because my dopamine was at a deficit, it was in a rut, it was below baseline. This action, taking this action, this movement to do this harder thing consistently catapulted my dopamine above baseline and actually created higher baseline for myself. So I got out of the rut. My dopamine got out of the rut, but I got out of the rut too. I mean, maybe this is the whole thing about, I'm in a rut. Well, maybe the dopamine is in a rut from being wiped out from devastation in all areas of health and life, maybe. And maybe it's not 100% our fault that we're in a rut. Well, it's not anyway. But what can we do about it? How can we optimally respond to this rut? Being positive, do this, do that, do a gratitude journal, whatever. That doesn't help when you're in a rut. I mean, it's not like a catapult thing. Nothing against those things. I'm just saying. Pretty powerful to learn how to catapult your dopamine out of a rut. So do hard things. So 20 years ago, I did this and I didn't realize I was leveraging my dopamine. It's pretty exciting though. Secretly in the back of my mind, I was always kind of worried about myself, but I didn't really care because it worked. So I wasn't that worried about myself. Clean my bathroom every morning for several weeks, probably 3 or 4. And then I didn't need to do that. Every time my alarm went off, I was able to get up and I got out of that clinical depression rut, which was a deficiency in dopamine rut. Okay, I'll share my screen again. Hopefully it works. So that's my story. And I'm sticking to it. I hope it encourages you. What can you do? How can you leverage physiology and do hard things? So here's some examples. Of course, clean the bathroom, number 1. Mop the floors, dust, change bed sheets, ride a stationary bike for 15 minutes. Walk stairs for 15 minutes. Clean out closets, make a coffee for your partner, your roommate, do meal prep for the week. Depending on your level of mobility and without causing any additional damage to your body, of course, engage in physical activity. Run or walk a mile, go to yoga, go for a walk for 15 minutes, go to the gym, schedule the doctor appointment, clean out the garage, or begin to do push-ups for 15 minutes if you can. And of course, any of this is if you can. You know what you can and can't do physically. So you don't want to do anything that's going to hurt yourself. You want to do things, the degree to which you can do them, help you thrive and help your health. You don't want to hurt yourself. Do physical therapy exercises for 15 minutes. I did physical therapy, had 9 surgeries in 18 months at Mayo, and that physical therapy will kick your tail. It's exhausting, and you're supposed to do it at home, and it's hard. Well, that's a hard thing. You keep doing it. So that's one of the hard things you can do, for example. Catapult dopamine with harder things. So of course, I have John Wayne. I'm not the type to sit around and wait for things to happen. John Wayne. I love John Wayne. He's got some good quotes. How does John Wayne relate to dopamine? Well, if you do the basics, dopamine will eventually be replenished and rise to your set baseline. If you do the basics, remember what the basics are: sleep, nutrition, fluid intake, movement, exercise. Is that all of them? You want to do the basics. You have to do the basics. If you don't do the basics, if you don't complete basic, you can't go on to more training. If we don't take care of the basics in regard to health, then expecting things to change optimally is a very unrealistic expectation, because the basics are profound and have a profound impact on your health and quality of life, and impact everything else that you do. Do the basics. If you do the basics, you can do this catapulting dopamine thing or improving dopamine. I mean, we want to improve it, and sure, we want to catapult it. We got to have like a decent baseline of dopamine fuel in the first place. So be sure that you're doing the basics. Know that you can also do some things to catapult your baseline levels to and above baseline if you are doing the basics. For example, cold water exposure And this is being uncomfortable in the water where you want to get out, but you can tolerate staying in it for 1 to 3 minutes. So, for example, taking a shower and toward the end of the shower, turning the water cooler, not freezing. Don't do some extreme freeze all the way to the far right. And also, of course, with anything, and we have the verbiage on the podcast that we are not giving any medical advice. I am not your personal therapist. For example, you want to speak to your medical team, you want to address things based on your health conditions and do what is safe and optimal for you, and not doing extreme things. So, for example, with this example of cold water exposure, taking a shower and towards the end, turning it cooler and cooler. And as you acclimate, you could make it cooler and cooler as you go, possibly, throughout the days and weeks. You don't want to get it so cold, though, that you hurt yourself, hurt your heart, or whatever that might be. So uncomfortable where you want to get out, but can tolerate staying in it for 1 to 3 minutes. Typically, this is between 35 and 55 degrees or so. It's a lot less comfortable than the warm or hot water from the shower. So that's an example. John Wayne is not the type to sit around, or was not the type to sit around and wait for things to happen. Dopamine will eventually rise to a baseline set point, but the problem is, what if your baseline or set point is below what it needs to be in the first place? And we need to raise that set point. We need to raise the baseline. So we need to do the basics. And then we can catapult it even beyond the baseline and possibly even change the set point baseline to higher and higher. These are things you can do. It includes doing hard things. Okay, so 25 years ago, the extreme wreaked havoc in my day-to-day life. Now I use them to make ORI continuums so I can find my optimal response instead of a knee-jerk extreme reaction. And here's another continuum, and this is the final one I'm talking about today. To the far left is fear, to the far right is perfect love. So I only found one scripture with extremes in it. In the Bible, Ecclesiastes 7:18, the wise man avoids all extremes. Context is key, though. They say study the Bible within context, study continuums, and use continuums within context too. Okay, so I thought about it and I thought, the biggest extreme I could think of in the Bible is fear, the kind from the enemy regarding punishment, guilt, shame, and condemnation. And the extreme opposite of that, which is love. God, who is love, casts out fear. Then God brought to mind the 40-day devotional he wrote through me during a 12-month period in 2011. And so I share this gift with you today with the downloadable link. May God's perfect love, the God of grace and comfort, fill you, casting out all fear. When fear shows up, you have the power to choose to focus and meditate upon and within God's perfect love. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in him. In this way, love is made complete among us so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment, because in this world we are like him. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. 1 John 4:18. And on that note, I will wrap up today. Go forth in love, move towards optimal, move towards the perfect love that God has for you. If spirituality is important to you, spirituality is not important to you, still encourage you to use the ORI continuums to find your balance, find the bookmarks of your extremes to help you find your continuums and move along those continuums for your health and your quality of life, because you are important. I'm glad you're here. I want you to continue to stay alert, stay alive, and thrive. And I'll see you soon, training.